Hi everyone, hope you're well and welcome to another Astro Live with the Astrological Association. I'm hosting this today. I'm Leanne McCafferty. I'm sure many of you are familiar with me. So throughout this, please do share your comments. Hello, just saying hi to everyone who's joining in. Please do share your comments, your thoughts. I'll do my best to keep up with the chat. And we can make this really interactive. So today I want to talk about Uranus, which is stationed direct. It's probably been stationed or standing still for the past day or two and the next couple of days, and then it will start slowly moving on. But it's actually stationed at what, 27? 27 of Taurus. And this is really exciting. Okay, now I'll tell you why, because this is the last time Taurus will change direction or station in Taurus in pretty much our lifetime, unless you're a child. But for all of us adults, this is the last time, okay? Because Uranus will not be back in Taurus once it moves out in a couple of months. It won't be back in Taurus until 2102, which is like 84 years. So this is a pretty big deal, to be honest. So if we want to think back to when Uranus went retrograde, so it was back in September last year, 2025. It was around the 6th of September, and Uranus had actually moved briefly into Gemini. So it's stationed at around 1 degree of Gemini and then slowly came back through Taurus. And then if we think further back, and this gives you a little bit of reference, doesn't it? Uranus has actually been in Taurus since May 2018. It stayed there for about, I don't know, 5 months, something like that, till about November 2018, dipped back, into Aries, and then it moved back into Taurus around March 2019 until now. So it's been in Taurus for what, the past 7 years. All right. And before that, it was last in Taurus, I think 1934 to 1942. So for any of you who are interested in history, go back and check that period and what resonates with it. But for us personally, this is really about what's happened over the past 7 years while Uranus has been in Taurus. So that will depend on how Uranus is configured in your own chart, your Taurus placements, anything like that. But essentially, Uranus wakes us up, doesn't it? Okay, it wakes us up to what is no longer working. What is old, what's worn out, what needs to change in order for us to evolve and to grow. And Uranus is about the higher mind, okay? And if we're stuck, if we're not growing, if we're not progressing, our mind doesn't grow either, okay? So that's just something to keep in mind. So if we think back to what's happened while Uranus has been in Taurus, there's been, themes of, financial innovation and upheaval. I'm thinking of Bitcoin, all those, innovations around digital currency. So on a personal level, you may have upgraded your personal finances. You may have changed the way you bank. And I know for a fact, more and more of us are just, everything's digital now, isn't it? I'm thinking back to when I used to use cash. I can't remember the last time I actually used some cash. Everything's just done with, you just hold your phone over and pay with with your phone or your card. In fact, I don't think I use a debit card very often now. It's just all on my phone, to be honest. So it's really kind of interesting when we think back of how much has changed in just 7 years. Other things, climate change, anything to do with the environment, they're big topics. Taurus is about the earth, about anything, physical material. Gender themes are massive. Taurus is a very feminine sign. It's about the body. So anything to do with that, we've gone through all of that. They're really topical things, aren't they? But again, on a personal level, because that's what I really want to touch on today, is think back to how your physical needs have perhaps changed. over the past few years. And that can be from the food you like, you know, what you put into your body, what you now don't put into your body. Perhaps you used to like certain foods or flavors and now you don't like them anymore. You know, think about your typical menu at home. Think about the meals you cook at home. I bet they've changed over the past few years too. You know, your appetite may have changed. And I would say the price of food is probably impacted that to a certain degree, because I think no matter where you go in the world, the price of buying food is certainly high and that type of thing. In fact, any resource, whether it's oil or gas, you know, we all know how prices have escalated for geopolitical reasons, that type of thing. But I think, Taurus, it's very much about our relationship with our body. And our body actually is our greatest resource, along with our mind. If our body and mind aren't healthy, we don't really have much else. You know, you can have £1 million in the bank, but if your body or mind aren't working, that £1 million isn't going to help, you know. So, you know, think about how your relationship with your body may have changed, how your body might have changed. It may have sort of become more healthy, a little less healthy. It's all dependent on age. You might be a bit rounder, a bit stockier, a bit more Taurus built than you were a few years ago. Or you may have put a lot of value and hard work into your body and feel fitter than you've ever felt. All these themes resonate definitely. And that's about beauty as well. Taurus is a sign, it's ruled by Venus. It loves beauty, loves anything, you know, to do with glamorizing ourselves. And that's another really interesting thing that's sort of grown over the past few years: aesthetics, makeup, the cosmetic industry. So think about how you decorate your body, how you dress, you know, anything that's Taurian. I bet your tastes have definitely evolved over the last few years. It's just about anything material, isn't it? And it's when we strip it back, it's about what we value. Okay, it's about what we enjoy and what we take pleasure in. You know, and those things do change as time progresses, and that's a very sort of Uranus thing. It's progressive. You know, what we liked, I don't know, a few years ago is probably very different to what we like now and what we value. But getting back to now, if you've perhaps felt a bit stuck recently, I know a lot of people have felt a bit stuck. They're swimming in circles, nothing's moving as fast as you'd like it to move. Or you felt bored or a bit frustrated. At last, the change you were longing for might start slowly coming and pushing forward as Uranus starts moving forward. And we need to bear in mind that Uranus is in Taurus, a fixed sign. It's not the fastest energy in the world, isn't it? You know, Taurus likes to take things quite steady. So that change might just take a little bit while, you know, time to gain momentum, but it will. The change is coming and Uranus is at least moving in the right direction now. And that's another thing about Taurus, because it's a sign that tends to resist change, especially if it's fast change, yeah? And Taurus just likes change, just get it done, you know? So, you know, some of the changes that I've been sort of mentioning there, they may not have been easy. You may have felt that they've perhaps been forced on you, or they've just taken a while for them to come to your consciousness, if you like. But those slower changes, they're the ones that last, okay? Taurus, it's a fixed sign. It's about sustainability, change that lasts, not sort of rapid here today, gone tomorrow change. You know, it really tends to sort of want change that stabilizes us and that will support us and fortify us as we move forward. And I think as we move forward, you know, and close the end of one era, which is that of earth and water, as we move into an era of fire and air, we do need some stability in our lives, something that will support us and fortify us, yeah, you know. And on that note of moving into a new era, Saturn is currently on the anaretic 29th degree of Pisces for the last time. It's ready to move into Aries, I think, on the 14th, which is it next week? Something like that. I've lost track of time. And that, you know, Saturn's going to join Neptune in Aries. So with Uranus also at the end of Taurus, this really is a closing chapter on the Earth-Water era. So, you know, I think in some ways we're privileged to be living through these times that, you know, none of us are going to see again. So I was looking at the chart of today, you know, Uranus at 27 Taurus, and I thought, oh, I'll have a quick look at the Sabian symbol because it's stationed. It's stuck on 27 of Taurus. And the Sabian symbol is actually a mature woman reawakened to romance. And I thought that was quite interesting because as Uranus has been going through Taurus, hopefully we will have elevated the way we process information. You know, our minds have hopefully gone up a little bit of a level or octave, if you like. And as I was saying earlier, Uranus wakes us up. So a mature woman reawakened to romance. To me, that suggests that we're perhaps more in touch with what's important to us, what we love in life. And perhaps we've been reawakened to what we like, what's important. And realised that we can find excitement in other places that we perhaps didn't at a point in the past. So that's just something to bear in mind as well. And of course, Taurus rules the throat. So perhaps we now know what is more important to us, what we value, what we want and what we desire, but we know how to ask for it. You know, we don't need to conform. We don't need to stay silent about what's important to us. And we're perhaps non-compromising about it. Yeah. And this leads me to the square that Uranus is forming with Mercury right now, which will exact tomorrow on the 5th at 27 of Aquarius and Taurus. And this is a really potent square because Uranus is the co-ruler of Mercury in Aquarius, of course. So expect all sorts of sudden bursts of insight. You know, you might be more outspoken than usual. You know, Mercury and Uranus together can be impulsive, outspoken. Just say what comes into your mind. Thoughts and ideas that you've been gestating, that have been really fertile but haven't been born yet, might suddenly burst out. Okay. And Uranus and Mercury together often offer a reboot of the mind. Okay, it's like a reset. It's like a software update. You know, when our computer or our phones update and get new software, the same thing can be happening to our minds and our value system right now. And because Taurus is a very physical, tactile sign, and Mercury's linked to the fingers, okay, I think there's potential for us to feel a little bit wired, perhaps. Or don't be surprised if you get static shocks. You know, if you touch things, you might get a bit of static going on. It's that electricity of Uranus manifesting not just in a mental way, but in a physical way, you know, things that you touch. So I'd expect some of that, you know, it could be felt on a very physical level. Honestly, if you're doing your hair in the next few days, it might be full of static. It's as simple as that. I love it when astrology resonates on a really literal level. Technology wise, yeah, we're bound to have some possible hitches, you know, with your electrics, your tech, your computer, which is very common when Uranus stations or changes direction, Mercury as well. And I think on a more collective level, we're going to see even more shocking revelations coming out in the news, particularly regarding the feminine principle. You know, again, Taurus is that earthy feminine sign ruled by Venus, which rules young women. And I'm thinking here of the Epstein files. where money's also a key factor. You know, the Epstein thing, it's about sex, money, young women. It's very Taurus, very Taurus. So yeah, I think we could see more explosive information coming out about that. But another reason why this Uranus station is really important is because it's the ruler of the solar eclipse that we have coming on the 17th of February, which is only in, a couple of weeks. And that's the first eclipse of 2026. And that's going to be at 28 Aquarius. So Uranus won't have moved very far. It's, still sort of gradually building speed. And Uranus is going to be square that eclipse. Okay, and it's if you follow the work of Bernadette Brady, who's done a lot of work on the Saros series, this eclipse is actually 10 north, and I thought it would be interesting to look at that. So this is what Bernadette Brady says about a 10 north eclipse. This is the eclipse on the 17th with Uranus square it. There is a very strong emphasis on communication, and at the same time frustrating or inhibiting events may come into the person's life via news, paperwork or a young person. The person may feel tired and drained, and this is therefore a good time to take things quietly and work through the difficulties one at a time. So I just thought it would be interesting to share that, something to keep in mind, and just see if that actually does resonate as we build towards that eclipse. And what's interesting about that eclipse is it will be the first eclipse with Saturn and Neptune both in Aries. Okay, so again, we're just pulling in that theme of change and excitement as we move into that new fire air era. So over the next couple of weeks and beyond, I just expect anything, to be honest. But I'm not going to go into that eclipse anymore today, because that's a whole talk for another time, of course, isn't it? But essentially, the next couple of weeks, they're incredibly Uranian. We've got a lineup of planets. I'm just looking today. We've got Mercury, Venus, Sun, Mars and Pluto all in Aquarius, all ruled by Uranus. Okay, so that's the energy we're carrying. It's very cerebral, very intellectual. It's very much about thinking forward and thinking about collective, themes. And I think anyone with placements at later degrees of Aquarius or Taurus are really going to be feeling this energy at the moment. You really will be picking it up. It's radical, it's innovative, it's exciting, it's shocking, but it's about pushing us forward, especially if you felt that you've been stuck in a rut somehow, which I think many of us probably have felt for a while. And, of course, all the Saturn, Neptune and Pisces stuff's contributed to that. But this is about establishing long-term change, change that's that resonates with what's important to you. So this is when we want to be thinking, reflecting about perhaps where we want to go in a year's time. We're making change that's going to last. And it's very much about clearing out the old. All right, we're very, very, much at the end of a one chapter, ready to pull the curtain down and close that and move into a new chapter. So we want to go into the new chapter in the best possible shape, don't we? And again, Taurus is a very physical shape type energy. So think about how you can mold your future. How are you going to remodel your future? How are you going to perhaps take what's valuable from the past with you, whilst leaving anything that isn't going to contribute in a valuable or positive way. Okay, so I'll leave you with a few thoughts. Really, make the most of the remaining time of Uranus being in Taurus. It's going to move into Gemini April 26th. So it's only really in Taurus for, a few more weeks. And most adults today will never experience Uranus in Taurus again. Okay, I think that's quite a profound thought. So yeah, make the most of it. Reflect on what's important and what's valuable and what you're going to take forward. So thank you so much for joining in, everyone. Again, if you love astrology as much as we do here at the Astrological Association, please do join up, astrologicalassociation.com. We've got the conference, which we're already working hard on organising. That's in September. And, all the other information is on the website. So again, thank you for joining in. Enjoy all those flashes of insight you're going to have over the next few days. Make the most of Mercury and Uranus and embrace the unexpected. Take care. Lots of love. Bye bye.